Welcome to the Perinatal Wellbeing Podcast. I'm Christine, your host and certified perinatal mental health professional. This podcast is all about authentic conversations. We want to open up the discussions around perinatal health and well-being, from mood and anxiety disorders to breastfeeding to grief and loss in the perinatal period, and everything in between. While this is not therapy or medical advice, it is the place where we are going to continue to open up the discussion around all things perinatal mental, physical, emotional, and sexual health to help reduce stigma and break down these barriers to support. Hi, Ashley and Adam. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Christine.
Hi.
Hi. So today we are going to talk about your journey into parenthood and that experience for both of you and what that's been like and what that has entailed. And so we are just going to start from the beginning. So why don't you both share with me, what has your journey been like coming into parenting? How did that come about for you both?
So we were married in 2013, and we lucked out in that we had a doctor at the time, my family doctor, who really trusted my instinct. And so when I went to him as early as December, so only a few months into marriage, not that that indicates needing to have kids or anything, but I had this weird hunch that something wasn't going to be working or wasn't working already in terms of fertility and trying to get pregnant. And so rather than waiting the year, like they are encouraged to do, he post-dated or pre-dated all the forms and referred us early, which I was grateful for because we went to like the first round of testing that they did. We did find some abnormalities on the sperm side of things. And then we started at a clinic that had a lot of locations, which was great for me, being my body needing to do most of the tests and most of the procedures. That was close to my work. So that is kind of where we started. A friend had told us about that clinic. And unfortunately, when you're going into the fertility world, unless you have someone to lean on, you kind of just do what you're told. So we didn't have a lot of questions. I mean, we did all the testing. And the first time we met with the doctor, the very first thing he said to me, which should have been the red flag, was, well, your body is too big. You're going to be the problem. You're probably going to have PCOS. And I mean, I was shocked when it was said to me without even looking at data, without looking at results. He didn't look at anything.
Wow.
And it was the first thing he said to me. And because we knew we wanted kids so badly, I kind of just turned a blind eye, and we kept with that clinic and we kept going and doing what they said. And looking back, I'm really frustrated with the way that clinic approached things, because even beyond that, I remember asking them at my first few appointments, being like, okay, so then what is our best route? And they said, well, we always do this first. You know, you do IUIs for however long, and then you start looking at other things. And I'm like, what? If that isn't going to work, if we know that sperm is the issue, then why? But this is conversations I had in my head. I didn't ask those.
Right. And can I ask you, Ashley, sorry to interrupt you, was it that like initial interaction that kind of carried over to make you feel like I don't feel comfortable to ask questions?
I don't think I ever felt uncomfortable asking questions. I don't think it ever crossed my mind to do it. I think I'm innately a trusting person. So I assumed that the doctor would be doing what science told them was the best option for us, not just what was easiest for them or fastest or, unfortunately, the best buck for them, because they are a business.
Yep.
I didn't want to think that. And I think we ended up doing like 4 or 5 failed IUIs with them before, from a financial standpoint and from an emotional standpoint, we just said we have to pause.
Right.
I think we took about a year off from that clinic.
Okay.
And then actually our massage therapist told us about a new clinic. Well, it was new to us. Had many locations as well, not as many in this area, much more south to Toronto and west into like Mississauga, Brampton and stuff, which wasn't great, but she raved about the doctor. And that was comforting, having had spent a lot of time thinking about how I had been treated and not liking the way they had approached the process. So we decided to try again. And at that point, we had kind of set some parameters because I knew IUIs weren't going to be enough. I mean, we're both educated enough and I know I read a lot about what we were going through. I knew that IUI wasn't going to be what it is. I knew it was going to end up having to be IVF. And so going to that clinic and doing all the testing, the first thing the doctor said was that, yeah, IVF is going to be your best chance. And you have to remember, it's just a chance. And the nice thing is that although there was still sperm issues, the majority of other issues were minimal. So we did have a good chance.
Right.
But I remember the day that we found out that it was going to be IVF, our best chance. And Adam had gotten some of his sperm number information, and it wasn't ideal. And it had been so long at this point. It had been almost, 2 years maybe at this point between the break and the other clinic and all this stuff. I remember getting back into the car after that appointment, and he was in pieces. And it was in Mississauga, so that's a bit of a drive for us. It was like an hour and a bit.
Right.
And we're also just freaking out about the financial part of it.
Yeah.
Right. Like if we were going to commit to trying, because we had kind of said to one another that we had to try. We couldn't not do it, and have always wondered if it would have worked. So the dollar number was scary, given how much we had spent at the last place. The fear of it kind of being like our last chance was huge. And I remember being really bothered by how upset you were, because you're not crazy emotional, but he was in pieces in the car. And then I drove him home, and I went to a baby shower. And I've been very open with my friends about our journey and how challenging it was. Two of them, the girls at the party, knew I was coming from an appointment.
Right.
So they just quietly asked me how it was, and I couldn't talk about it. Like, I just fear, and I don't know if I would ever say shame, because it's not like we did anything wrong.
No, it's our body is just the way it is. It's out of our control almost.
Which for a type A control person was also hard to deal with.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that that's it, right? Like, from trying to conceive to having kids, and like every stage of parenting, it's like a constant letting go of control, right? And that realization of how little control we have. I'm curious to know, Adam, if you don't mind sharing, what was that like for you? Because Ashley was saying, like, you were in pieces. What was that like for you?
Well, like I said, it felt like it was out of my control, because I'm a relatively athletic and fit person. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do any drugs like that. And the fact that my body was letting me down when I was looking to have kids, and not providing providing the pieces, the puzzle for us to have kids, very, very depressing, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I'd done anything wrong. I've tried to live my best life as much as I can, and it's not working out. So I was
blamed yourself.
Blame myself. I was very distraught that something I'd looked forward to for a very long time, to be having a family, having kids, and whatever that leads to in the future, was going to be not possible for me. And I was, been with Ashley since 2005.
We've been together for almost 10 years at that point.
Yeah. So, I went from being with her when she was 18, and now here we are at 28, 29.
Oh, then, not now.
No.
Yeah. Got you.
But yeah, we started dating when she was 18, and it's, we've already lived a lot of our 20s, not necessarily married, but living the the life we wanted to do. We're single. We're free from any kids, right? We've had our trips, we've had our sports, our fun times out together, and all of a sudden here we're looking to build up something for the future. We've pushed it until our late 20s to try and have kids, and all of a sudden it's not available to us.
Yeah.
It's we talked about since we started dating, like, this is what I'm looking for in the future, and this is the kind of job we want to have. This is the life we want to live. Getting older together and having kids, and all that leads to as well. And all of a sudden, poof, that's gone. It was very devastating. I was very distraught, like Ashley said earlier. And
he had said a lot, it's my fault. And that was really hard for me to hear too.
Yeah.
Because we never once, like, in the fertility process, neither one of us pointed fingers at one another. Mm-hmm. We both just tried to do the best we could for ourselves, knowing that would be what helped. Like, we both went to acupuncture to support the process and to help. And we both worked through different nutrition programs and different exercise regimes. Like, we did all the right stuff, and the way they were going about it at that first clinic just wasn't working.
Right.
So we knew that we had to try more.
Right. Adam, did you have anyone, like Ashley, you mentioned you had some close friends and you were open with them, you were able to talk about it. Adam, did you have anyone around you that you could talk to about it?
I didn't know anyone else that had gone through the situation we were in.
Right.
I don't really like to share a lot about myself with other people. I'm kind of a surface guy, especially in the line of work I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to keep things to myself. I can't really share it around.
Right.
And that sort of translates over to my personal life as well.
Yeah.
It's got better in the time since that time because of the situation we're in. And
now that we have the kids,
he
feels more comfortable speaking about what we went through.
Yeah.
He's close with his mom. They did talk a lot about the challenges we were going through.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't know, but it's people asking, "Oh, you're married now. When are you gonna have kids?" That's the question you always seem to get. I think girls or women get it often more than guys do, but there's always the guy that's like, "Oh, I have 3 kids now. When are you gonna start having kids?" Or "You've been married longer than I have. When are you gonna? When are you gonna get going? When are you gonna have those kids? You can start coaching those sports teams, or what's
what's taking you so long?"
Yeah, the offhand comments, right? So it's at the start it was really tough, and as well during this whole process, I had a pretty major injury, which knocked me out of commission for 3 years. So on top of not being able to have kids, I was also not able to have my outlet of sports the way I wanted to do it. So it was a very rough period.
Lots of heavy layers to it on his end.
Yeah.
Physical and mental. It was a lot of stuff compounding all at the same time.
Yeah.
And I got out of it, of course, because here we are, but it was rough. It was really rough for a while.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And so that sounds really isolating too, like not having someone or people to talk to, not being able to kind of like share or, just have that space, right? Again, there's a lot of gender socialization that goes into that, right? And like, I think too, even when we talk about fertility issues, you said before, Ashley, like, okay, even though it was, a problem with sperm, you're still the person as the birthing person having to do so much of the treatments and all the treatments and, all the things. Right. And so sometimes it feels like maybe there's not a space, for the man to talk about it because like the woman, quote unquote, is going through all the things. Right. But, it was a lot on you as well, Adam.
It was, yes.
And I don't even know we would check in with one another, but like he didn't share a lot of even his feelings with me, like throughout. He's always been a bit of a waits until it's explosive to share. That might not be the right word, but
yeah, it
has to get big for him to share with me because I'm much more sensitive. I'm much more empathetic, and he is very aware of how much my own mind puts pressures on me. And so he doesn't ever want to like add his own to it, which, I mean, I appreciate it, but at the same time, I know that he needs an out, and sometimes it just can't be me.
Right, because you're going through the same thing in your own ways, but you're both going through this hard thing, which joins you in one sense, it connects you in one sense, but then also like you're both hurting, you're both struggling, you both need an outlet, you both need someone who's like maybe feeling better than you in that moment to be able to like be that sounding board or that person to like take on that emotion, you know, to help you, right? And that's really tough to do that when you're both going through it and struggling at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Did you feel, Ashley, did you share a lot with Adam about
I share everything with him. Sometimes I wish I didn't, because of the same reason I know he doesn't share with me. I don't want to always necessarily add to his load, but I don't know if maybe it's even an assumed assumption on my end, but maybe because he doesn't listen to me most of the time when I talk, I just assume that it's kind of he can hear it and let it go. Stuff doesn't always weigh on him in the same way as it does on me, which is why I think he can do the job he does well. But I'm not the same way. If I hear it, I stress and putter, and it doesn't go away from my mind. I need to offload in order to be able to let go of anything, which is kind of why we've worked so well together for so long, because we do balance each other in that way. He can kind of carry my load, my mental load, when I can't, or a more emotional load than mental load. But unfortunately, we're kind of unbalanced in that sense, because I can't offer the same ear to him. But he's also not from around here. So, I mean, like the only people he's started to get close to or met have been through work, or are like my girlfriend's husbands, which he'll talk to casually, but not open up to. That alone, geography, I think, has limited his opportunity to share with people.
Right. Right.
I don't even know if I answered your question.
Yeah. No.
See, my head just goes.
Yes. No, it's all good. And so what was going on kind of like once you had that appointment and you're like, it looks like IVF is the way we're going to have to go. How did that progress from there?
Fast. The clinic, it definitely wasn't new, but I don't feel like the clinic was as busy then as it is now. It's much more popular.
Okay.
So it was much easier to get appointments, to call. It was very quick. We had our first hunk of tests, like I feel like the next month, and the retrieval was the month after that. Like it was like bang, bang, bang. Like I think we met with them and signed all the papers to do IVF early to mid-January, and then we did the retrieval over March break. So it was fast. Like they had all the information they needed, and they did it all so efficiently. And then we did the retrieval in March. And actually, a funny thing is, I was purging through my emails today, and I found all the emails with all the embryo data. So I reread it just for interest's sake. So they managed to retrieve 11 eggs. 7 were mature. So 7 were fertilized, of which only 4 got into day 5. And of those 4, there were only 3 that were viable. Wow. So our numbers just kept going down quickly. And so they froze that and gave my body a month off, or 2 months off. I don't know, it's like a month and a half, just depends on your cycle. And then we did our first frozen embryo transfer on the May long weekend. And it took, so it was like a 5-month turnaround.
Wow. And so you said that felt fast. Did that feel fast in the moment? Like when you were doing all those testing and then back to the clinic and then.
Yes and no, because like most of the appointments I was doing close to work. So it just felt like I was going to work a bit early. The bigger appointments, there wasn't as many of them. So it's not like it felt like a big deal. Mm-hmm. No, I really don't think it felt fast in the moment. Just looking at it back now, like 5 months, like holy smokes, 5 months, that's it.
Yeah.
Like it seems fast now. It didn't feel fast then.
If that had been our first contact with fertility clinics, it might have
True. It
been
may
too
have
fast, but
right.
because we had already been through the other clinic and their procedures
And had a bit of an idea. Like it wasn't the most positive experience, but we at least now had experience in dealing with it and more about asking, knowing what to ask, and that we could.
Right. So Adam, what was that like for you coming out of, okay, having to kind of wrap your head around we're going to move to IVF and like really struggling with that mentally, and then, you know, going into that process and coming up to transfer day? What was that like for you?
I was very excited by the fact that we had 3 viable embryos, and the
Right.
fact that this is the first sign of success we've had through the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
We've been going at this for 5 years,
2 years,
2 years, but like Ashley said, we tried naturally to have kids as early as December of 2013, right? Right after we got married. So we tried for a couple of years to have kids, and then all of a sudden, here we are, implant day, and it's like very exciting. Transfer day. And it's just, we were waiting to see whether it was going to take, and that, given the stats we had, that not every IVF works, and given the fact that she was under the watch of a physician who was looking out for our best interests and really was asking questions that we hadn't heard other places, I was very confident and that this was going to work. And I was more excited than anything else. All of a sudden, after 5 years of nothing, all of a sudden there's hope. There's the light at the end of the tunnel,
which is so scary, though. Hope is so scary in the IVF world.
Yeah, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There was a chance.
Mm-hmm.
They were saying there was a chance, and after all the tests we had done, all the genetic testing, all the injections we had to do, different
genetic testing.
I don't know. Blood work. All the testing they did of my sperm, right? So seeing whether there was genetic imperfections or defects or things of that nature. And they're saying that there's a couple that were viable, the 3 embryos that were viable, and here's the 1 in 3 chance, because we weren't going to go through this process again. This was our 1 in 3 chance, and let's see whether this is going to work or not.
Well, that isn't totally right either, because no, it wasn't that. We had agreed together that we would fund ourselves 1 IVF round. But at the time, the government was also offering government funding. Mm-hmm. So the deal was that we would do 1 funded cycle, like we would pay for 1 ourselves. And then if that didn't work and we could emotionally handle the chance again, then we would do the government funded one. And at that point, we were calling it quits. Right. If that didn't take. So we had kind of set ourselves those parameters, mm-hmm. so that we knew when we would close the door.
Right. You had boundaries, so to speak.
Yes, which we did. We didn't talk about it all through the first clinic, but it was once IVF became the option, we didn't want to just keep going because of that hope thing.
Yeah. And so what was transfer day like for you, Ashley?
I don't remember it a lot.
Okay.
I really don't. I don't know. I don't remember if I was allowed to drive home that day. I think I was. I think it was the retrieval day I wasn't. I get very car sick, so I wasn't very happy about not being able to drive home.
Right.
I had to be the passenger, and that doesn't go well with my body. I think transfer day, though, was fine. I mean, like, I had done all the reading. I wore fuzzy socks, and we went to acupuncture within 24 hours. I had been to acupuncture 24 or 48 hours before. I had bought my pineapple to eat my core. Like, I was ready. And I mean, Adam said he felt hopeful. Like he was, looking for that glimmer of hope. I was trying to not. I wanted the science to do its job. I wanted to get told what was happening. I wanted to keep my mind and my heart as scientific as I could, because the hope part during IUIs was the hardest part, was the most hurtful part, when you wait to get that call with the results. And I worked really hard to not feel anything.
Mm-hmm. You were protecting yourself.
I had to.
Yeah, absolutely. Which makes so much sense because it's so vulnerable. Hope is, it can sustain us as human beings, but it's also vulnerable
Definitely.
because, like you said, if it doesn't, go the way that we're hoping that it goes, right? So, what came of transfer day?
So I think it was about 10 days later because it wasn't a full 14 days. I don't remember going for blood work that morning, but I did.
Okay.
And I'd say around, they had said by about 2 we would hear. And I remember getting the call, and I don't know how the hell I did it, but I stayed cool as a fucking cucumber. I did.
Yeah.
He was watching soccer or something on Saturday afternoon, probably like Premier League or something. And I had in the future kids room, because we did have a crib already. Again, that stupid little hopeful thing. In that closet, I had bought a number of years ago, Mama Bear and Dada Bear mug. And so I went and I got it. And I grabbed the transfer photo because they gave us a photo of the embryo implanted. And I just wrote on it that it worked. And I stuck the picture on the mug and handed it to him. And I don't think either of us cried.
Oh, it was sort of a relief. It was
Yeah.
like, this is what we've been hoping for.
And then it was like, fingers crossed that it just stays.
Right.
Because we, in some weird way, we had lucked out in that we had never experienced pregnancy. So we never experienced loss in that sense. So I was maybe naively hopeful that if it hadn't happened before, that it wouldn't happen, that we wouldn't experience a loss like a miscarriage. But that became my next fear. It was what do I do? And so I just did everything I was told.
Right. And so what was that like for you, Adam? Like Ashley handing you that mug and it worked. You said relief and
I was very relieved. It was a good day. I was very happy. And like I said, we'd never experienced loss. So this was like, there's a chance here. Let's see what happens. We know what the stats are about miscarriages, or we didn't know whether she was able to carry a child, or if there'd be something we'd never gone through that process before, right? We'd never been pregnant. So this was like brand new beginning for everything, brand new time. And it's like, I was just very hopeful. I'm more of a optimist, and I like to see the good in everything. And I was hoping that this would go pretty well in our situation.
It was like the second good thing, right? All the embryo stuff had worked out. This was like step 2 had worked out. Things were definitely looking up.
Yeah, we were on a roll. We were hoping that would be consecutive good things happening, and that would lead us to the ultimate goal of a healthy kid.
right. And so how did that pregnancy go?
Fantastic.
Good.
The hardest part was honestly the first few months, because I gather my hormones weren't in the best shape. So I was on a lot of progesterone support, which pretty much put me to sleep for 2 months. Like I managed to get through work, the last 5 weeks of work, like a zombie. I'm a teacher, so I was off by the end of June, but I slept about 20 to 22 hours a day for July and August.
Wow.
It was insane. My poor mother kept saying, you should probably try and come to the gym. You'll feel so much better if you exercise. So I would drag myself out to the gym only a couple times. I do the workout and I go home, I go back to bed.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't going to help. It was major hormone overload, but I'm glad I slept because I don't think I've ever slept as much since.
Yeah, exactly. Just remember that time when you slept.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was nice.
And so then how did the pregnancy progress?
It was great. No gestational diabetes, no hypertension, no anything. Like it was a really great pregnancy.
Great. And so from that pregnancy,
we got a little boy.
Yeah.
He was born at 39 and 5. The induction, it was not C-section. And that induction alone may also have had reasons that I didn't ask questions about that I probably should have. I think my OB was a little bit not obese phobic because I'm not a small girl, but I think he was a little bit more obese pregnancy anxious because he had kind of said, we'd like to do an induction. And me having control issues, I had said, well, I was very, very anxious about going into labor and not knowing who my doctor would be. Very much so. And he had said, I guess it would have been around 39 and 2, like the Tuesday, the Monday or Tuesday, I had an appointment. And he had said, look, I'm working Friday. So if you are comfortable with an induction, there's a spot I can put you in. And I said, does that mean you would be my doctor? He said, yes. And put me down. I didn't even second guess it.
Right.
The comfort of knowing who would be my doctor made the difference for me. So we went in, I guess, the Thursday night, did the whatever they do to you on the induction. I don't even remember what it's called anymore.
Yeah.
Had to stay the night, which I wasn't happy about. We hadn't really stayed away from our dogs before, well, in a long time, maybe ever. Yeah. So the idea of not having planned that out and like waiting to hear if we would have to stay the Thursday night or if we could go home and then go back Friday. Again, that unknown, that not being able to plan it out myself really was hard. Yeah. Especially because I had to have so many people on like backup to be able to come and take care of the dogs. That was tough. Of course. So yeah, we admitted Thursday night. Friday morning stuff was still slow. Broke my water at like 9. Everything's slow as heck. And then to the point where I sent Adam home. I said, can you go check on the dogs, spend some time with them? We're not going anywhere.
Right.
That was like probably 4:30, because I think my sister worked at the hospital and she had come and seen me before she finished work and then left. And then I remember his mom and my mom were in the delivery room. And I remember saying to his mom, because my mom had left with my sister for a bit. And I was like, I just kind of turned over at one point. I'm like, you need to call him. You need to call Adam. It's like, it's game on. And I think you guys were already on your way back. You like ran into the delivery room. And I don't remember saying it, but apparently his mom said that I told him to take his sweatshirt off because I had made him wear a particular t-shirt for the delivery. I don't remember that at all. I don't remember much. This is all just from what I remember being told. Yeah. But yeah, super quick. I outpushed my mom, which was fantastic. She had about a 19-minute delivery with me. I did 17.
Hey, there you go.
17-minute push, and he came flying out fast and furious. Apparently the look on his face was pretty good. I wasn't paying attention.
Right.
And we didn't know what the...
Yeah, we didn't find out gender.
Wow. Okay.
Which everyone found hilarious because, again, control issues.
Right.
But did not find out. So we were very excited. I don't even think you said it right away. I feel like I had to holler to be like, what is it? I ended up, unfortunately, I did hemorrhage and they had turned off my epidural before they dealt with the hemorrhage. So there was a lot of pain after because I had also torn. I had like a 2nd-degree tear. So they're like putting all these clotting needles in my thighs, trying to get the bleeding to stop and then stitching me up after. My mom said that she was going to definitely come to my 6-week follow-up appointment to tell a doctor to next time treat somebody before stitching them up.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get that done and it was not nice.
Right. Okay. And sometimes, when we have experiences like that without pain management, that can feel traumatic.
Yeah, probably. I couldn't tell you anything I said or did around. It's all black. I remember being so excited to see him, like, see the baby do that, like, crawl, like that newborn crawl up to the nipple. I was like so pumped. I don't remember anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is a way for our brains to protect ourselves if we're in a, experiencing extreme pain or something, dangerous is happening type of thing. That's a way to protect ourselves, right? To not remember.
Having him as a newborn, like, he was such an easy kid. And I was so ready to be a mom that, like, fucking rocked it.
Right.
Having one baby now that I've experienced twins is fucking walk.
Right. Yeah. What did
And
we
I'll
say
say it
about?
all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Easy peasy. And I had told, we invited his mom to stay with us for the week because they don't live close. And we wanted her to be able to experience, some stuff. But I remember her saying like 2 or 3 days in, she's like, you guys don't need me. Why am I here?
Oh, that's lovely.
So I tried harder at that point to kind of give some of my jobs
Control.
away, but I was just like, no, I'm good.
Yeah. And so, Adam, what was delivery like for you, witnessing that?
Well, once I rushed to the hospital, it's like something from a movie.
It really was. He was there for like the last 25 minutes.
Yeah,
Right.
once I got in there, it was pretty exciting because so at the end, I was at the end of the bed, just waiting to see what was going to happen. So I think your mom and my mom were up at your head.
Yep.
So
the moms had to be a belly button up rule.
yes.
Right.
So I got moved to the end, and I was just waiting to see what was going to happen. I saw everything that was happening down there.
You had to hold my leg for the push.
Yeah, I held her leg.
Which was funny because the poor other nurse, I don't think realized kind of how strong I could be, and I almost pushed her over to the point where the doctor then actually the doctor goes to the same gym that we go to, so he planted his leg and he said, put your foot on my thigh. So I did that, and then he had the other one, and it was much more efficient than pushing someone over.
Yeah, so I became part of the medical team.
Yeah, absolutely. You were right in there.
Honorary medical degree, yeah. But yeah, it was pretty exciting. So once my son actually came out, he came out actually spinning. Once he came out,
wow.
So it was pretty exciting. So at that point, I was finding out whether it was a boy or a girl. So in mid spin, I was able to decipher
Right.
what the gender of the kid was.
Right.
And then once he got taken out, cleaned off, I held him for a little bit. He was all wrapped up, and sort of a culmination of everything we had been through for the past 7 or 8 years.
Forever.
Yeah. Since we've been together. So it was like not the end, but it was a significant step in our journey. And I think we were both mentally ready for the next step at that point.
What would have been the next step for you?
Getting home and using all this
having
all the
a
baby
kid
stuff we had. We had the nursery set up, like Ashley said, 10 days after.
No, even before that. I had found a crib on Kijiji, so I was like, why not? If it doesn't work out, then I didn't spend a bunch of money. But,
right.
I was excited to use all the stuff we'd bought.
Yeah.
Been gifted.
Yes. You were ready. Like Ashley said, both of you felt ready for this, like becoming parents and
100%.
Into that. Wow. And so then when did you decide to try again for babies 2 and 3?
So I think what kind of complicated that was it was during COVID, right? So our first guy was born early 2019. So by the time he turned 1, that was when the pandemic started, in just after his birthday of 2020.
Wow.
And so we kind of thought to ourselves that we didn't want to wait too long to try again because we didn't know how the pandemic was going to affect the process or the timing. So we did it almost right away. Eric was 15 months old. 15 months old. It was the May long weekend again when I had called the clinic and they said, okay, well, if we're going to do this again, you need to be done breastfeeding. So that was it. The last time I breastfed my first son was the May 2-4 weekend.
Wow.
And we went right back to the clinic. We did a transfer in early July, I think, that time.
Okay.
July?
No, it would have been around the same time.
No, because they would have been due a month later.
Yes. Okay. So early. Yes.
Yeah. So July, it was end of May for Eric. So yeah, it was early July. We did a transfer. So again, really quick turnaround, but because they already had the embryos.
Yes.
Right. So we didn't have to do the whole process. Yeah. So they had to do a month, a 1-cycle study of my body just to make sure that everything was good again. And then it was go time.
Wow. And how did that feel for both of you going into another transfer? What was that like?
We were very hopeful again that, and we were kind of felt like we were pushing our luck. The fact that to have 2 IVFs in a row would have been spectacular.
Yes.
So we were very hopeful, and of course, we're coming into it with a different perspective because we've been through the whole process once,
Right.
and we're just hoping for exactly the same thing to happen again.
Right. But there was another layer to this one. So because we had only had 3 viable embryos, we had talked a number of times about what we would do with the fact that if we had a successful transfer, then there would be 1 left. Like, what are we going to do?
Right.
Are we going to try for 3? We kind of had said that it felt weird leaving 1, so to speak, and not knowing if it could have worked and we could have had a bigger family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember saying to the doctor, it's only funny because of how things turned out.
Right.
I said, we've only got 2 left. I'm like, any chance you'd be okay transferring both? We've talked about twins. I think we'll be okay if it works out. And he had said, nope, never. It's not worth the risk. You're too young. It's too likely to complicate things, to make things hard on you, to be hard on the babies, to have the pregnancy be hard. He's like, I won't unfortunately do 2, but I'm very happy to transfer 1. Okay. So in my mind, I was like, no problem. Twins are not an option.
Right.
And then 6 weeks later at our ultrasound, I'm having twins. Surprise!
Okay, so how did that happen? What happened?
Well, we ended up with identical twins. The embryo split once it transferred.
So that's a 1 in 10,000 chance. 1 in every 10,000 IVF transfers results in
identical
the twins. Embryo splitting
after day 5.
And it's so funny because in my head I was like, well, they can't be identical because I'm thinking, oh, you transferred both. And wow, 1 in 10,000.
Yeah.
So what was your reaction at that, like at that time?
So we had gotten the positive blood work at the 2-week mark or whatever. And the first ultrasound was at like 5 weeks. It was early. And we had already told people that it had been successful. Like, we were pregnant. We didn't know anything else. I had told more people. I don't know if you had told them. I'm a sharer. So I told some people. I remember sitting on the table doing the ultrasound. Sorry, I'm like shaking more because it's cold. The door's open. I remember like, so here's baby A. And I'm like, pardon? She's like, and there's baby B. And I like sat up. And I'm like, are you shitting me? And she's like, oh yeah, there's 2. And I'm like, but we only put in 1.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, yeah, that happens with IVF. And I'm like, if you put in 2, I was just flabbergasted. Yeah. And then I had to go empty my bladder, and they continued to do an internal ultrasound because it was early still. So they did both external and internal.
Yeah.
And I remember then again, it was also COVID. So I didn't actually even get to see my doctor. So I went into the car, waited for him to call like usual once he saw the scans.
Right.
And he even joked with me. He's like, so we only put in 1, right? And I'm like, that's what we said we did. And he's like, well, you're getting 2 babies. I'm like, so I've been told.
Wow. I'm sure he was shocked too, considering like you actually had the conversation.
Isn't that ironic? Yes, it was pretty funny. I think I drove for about 7 minutes before I called Adam, who was working at home that day. So my mom was here looking after Eric. I remember saying to Adam, I was like, you can tell my mother. Because my mom was the type of woman that you go in the mall, she sees someone with twins, she's like, oh shit, God bless you. Like, wouldn't want to be you. And so I was like, you can tell my mother we're having twins. Right. Do you remember what she said to you?
No effing way or something that.
No, she said, well, you're fucked.
Yeah, you're fucked.
Thanks, Mom. Love you too.
In her defense, she has been here every single night that Adam's been working, every day that he's worked. She has really been the only reason I think we've been able to pull through that part.
Right.
But even when I called my sister and told her, she was like, hold on, I'm with a patient. Like, give me a second. And then so she finished what she was doing and she's like, pull over. I want to FaceTime with you. And then I told her, she's like, have you told Mom? And I'm like, no. She's like, we have to FaceTime her. And at that point, she was already like almost in the weird hysterical laughter phase. Like she knew what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And so what was your reaction, Adam? What was that like for you?
Well,
See, I don't even know because I
I,
wasn't here.
yeah, I was working downstairs in the basement during COVID. We were out of the office for 8, 9, 10 months in a
Right.
row.
Yeah.
So that became my dungeon, like my working dungeon.
I hear you.
So, all of a sudden I'd look at my phone and it's Ashley calling. Wasn't expecting a call.
But you knew I had an appointment.
Yeah, well, I wasn't expecting a call. And all of a sudden she says, "Oh, we're having twins." No, we only put one in. What's going on here? This shouldn't be possible. And lo and behold, it was possible. So we had already agreed that twins would have been okay. We already said, let's put in two. Let's use all 3 embryos we have. So
Yeah.
mentally, I was prepared for having twins, but not in this particular scenario. Only having put in 1 embryo.
Right.
So I'm like, and then being a sports guy, I'm like, well, all the famous sports twins, all the brothers that played together, like the Sedines,
we didn't know brothers at the time.
okay, all the like even siblings, like the Williams sisters in tennis, and famous hockey players that are brothers, and like, well, think about this. You can have like a dynamic duo.
We can have a whole lineup.
Dynamic duo.
Dynamic duo, because I knew they'd be identical because we put one in. So I'm like,
Right.
I could have like doubles rowing. They could exactly be the same weight. They could be the perfect team. So I'm like,
you were like really on board. You were just
well,
like, oh, let's.
we had a long time to think about building a family.
Oh, that family,
right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, all these dreams and aspirations in my mind, like,
yeah,
this is happening. This is possible. Like,
and they grew
exponentially. So I'm like, I'm going from 1 kid to 3 within a 2-year period, and it's astounding. So
right.
And of course, we're gonna not just be focusing on sports or anything, but like, this is something that's possible. This is like gigantic.
Yes.
I'm saying a lot of like huge words, but that's what I felt. It was like, this is overwhelming. This is everything we dreamed of and more.
Right. Neither of us are like religious people by any means, but like it really did feel like miracle after miracle with all that we went through, and like having 1 healthy kid was an amazing blessing by itself, and then to be gifted 2 for 1 it was almost like universe saying like, here, we fucked up, you probably should have had more sooner.
Here's all the kids.
Yeah, here, take them all at once.
Yeah.
Not long after, I will say, very quickly after, we decided that we would donate that 3rd embryo.
Right. You're like, okay,
we want that to happen again.
We're done after this. Right. Okay.
Because then everyone kept saying, imagine if you did put both in and they both split on you. Yeah. It could have happened, right? It would have been terrifying.
It could have happened, and let's not imagine.
Exactly. I'm like, you don't live it. You don't want to imagine it.
It's fine for you. So can I ask, that decision, you were like, not long after we made that decision to donate the embryo, how did that feel for both of you? Did it feel like easy to do, hard to do? How did that feel? When
you agree to the IVF process, you have to sign off, at least with this clinic. I obviously can't speak to all, but you have to sign off on what they do with your biological matter. So stuff that doesn't work, like, so even the embryos that didn't grow, like, what do they do with them? There's like legal pieces to it. Mm-hmm. So for all of the stuff that had not worked, we had both agreed science would be best, because we figured if it wasn't going to work for us, then you know what, you better damn well learn something from it and not let other people go through it. Mm-hmm. And I think we hadn't talked about embryos not having worked, because I think during the initial process when we were doing the paperwork, we assumed that any embryos that did take would be like with us, so to speak, right? Like if we had an embryo that didn't work, then it would be science, because we would know it didn't work, so it would be donated to science. But then I think it might have been me that said we should probably donate it.
Yeah. Our belief, our feeling was that 3 kids was going to be the magic number for us, based on jobs we have and the size of our house and
just life.
Just life, right? Yeah. So the 3rd embryo, we figured that, if it is viable for whoever wants to take it, give somebody else a chance to have a kid. Like if two of our embryos work, the third one, probably is going to work as well. It could be good for somebody, right? So let's let them have the opportunity to have a child, and
maybe some of
it's like passing it on, right? It's like passing on a good gesture. So paying it forward, exactly. So
it wasn't a hard decision.
Yeah, we're like, we don't want to know if somebody takes it, if it gets donated to science,
which we weren't allowed to anyway. Once you decide to donate it, it's all off your plate. You know nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
So there is a chance that we biologically have a kid walking around somewhere else, but
or two,
or three,
or four.
Or, who knows? So that's So it's better to not know in our situation,
100%.
anyways. But if we see a kid that looks like our kid out there sometime, then we'll say, that's
good for you.
Good for you. It worked.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was both of us making that decision. We had the same feeling, so there was really no debate.
Right.
Let's just donate it, and they'll do whatever they feel like.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I, haven't heard much discussion around that, and even like in a lot of these conversations, it's really, people having fertility challenges and then, using what they have or, all they've got or like didn't get or whatever that looks like. And so, that, okay, we're good. We got 3. And so that topic of donating viable embryos, hasn't come up in discussions on the podcast. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Happy to share something new.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how did the pregnancy go?
That one was still really good. Like I was larger with 2, a little bit more uncomfortable. I didn't really ever feel uncomfortable with the first pregnancy. I worked out through both of them almost right to the end. Obviously made modifications to be comfortable and safe and such. No, it was great. I mean, it was busier because it was twins, so I had more appointments, and had to be with a specialist team because it was twins. And so we were down at Sunnybrook. Oh, we just lost our light. So they agreed to a doctor down at Sunnybrook took me on because they have one of the better NICUs in the area, I guess, even size-wise.
Yeah.
So that meant that I had to go down to Sunnybrook. It was almost every other week. So it was a lot, which in the long run ended up being helpful because at least I knew my way around the place from when it came time for delivery.
True.
Around 30. So this was all also during the pandemic. So we're pregnant from July of 2020 on. And so he's not with me for anything. He doesn't get to come to anything. Didn't really come to a lot.
Sorry, I'm curious to know, what was that like for each of you? For you, Ashley, not having your partner there, and for you, Adam, not being there.
Well, I think you had come to the anatomy scan for Eric for first because the world wasn't closed at that point. But for me, once again, I think partly maybe selfishly, I was kind of like, no biggie. I mean, he didn't have to take time off like I did in order to do it. He was able to be around with our first kid so that he wasn't always alone or with grandma. So it didn't really faze me that you weren't there, especially because everything was going smoothly, I think is probably the real caveat. There was no big red flags or issues that had come up that made me feel like I needed to have a support person with me.
Okay.
I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's just the fact that the world was shut down overall. I felt like there wasn't really an option to ever have a chance to go. Yeah. So if it had been the only time we had a pregnancy, I feel like I would have completely missed out on that aspect of our life. But having been through it with the first pregnancy with Eric, I feel like I had that experience, that understanding, and been there for her emotionally during the first time. And by the second pregnancy, she was a seasoned veteran. So.
Right.
But both pregnancies were really smooth. So we didn't have any issues where I felt we needed to lean on one another.
Right.
The twins were both breech.
Okay.
And so that's when my anxiety started to get a little heightened, was closer to the end of the pregnancy when they were both still upside down. I really, really was hoping they would both get to at least 5 pounds. And the doctor said they had really large noggins. So he was anxious about that a bit. I was hoping to do a vaginal birth because it was what I was familiar with. And the idea of a major C-section surgery was a little bit intimidating. But I killed it.
Of
I
course
did
you did.
really, really good with a C-section.
Of course you did.
And both boys, again, we did not know the gender.
Wow.
I still can't believe it. Everyone was shocked. They're like, isn't the twin part enough of a shock? Like, shouldn't you find out? And I was like, no, I can't.
Right. Okay.
But the hardest part was come delivery day. So they had set in the C-section date for February 24th at 2, which would have put us at 35 and 5, which was still really early. And again, unfortunately, this is my ignorance and probably my blind faith in the medical system, which maybe I need to start tweaking, but I didn't really ask why we were doing it so early. Even when we were getting prepped for surgery, and the nursing staff was like, okay, so why are we doing the C-section at 35 and 5? I'm like, because he said so. Like, I didn't really have a really good answer. I came to believe that he was anxious about spontaneous labor, with both of them being in the breech position.
Right.
So I think he wanted to kind of head it off. So I never did get that confirmed, but that's kind of what I've always been confirming with myself.
Right.
Was because their positions hadn't changed. He didn't want to wait to the point where things could possibly have to go into an emergency state.
Right.
Which I'm okay with. So we were getting prepped for surgery. It took forever to get in. There may have been an emergency before us. We don't know.
Right.
But they find the heartbeats on both of them. They strap the heart monitors on them both. And literally right before they wheel us into the next room, I look at the numbers and I said, oh, fucking boys again. And Adam was like, I thought you didn't know. I'm like, I don't, but look at the numbers.
Yes.
Right.
That's so funny. And there's obviously a lot of factors. You've had a baby before, but not a C-section. So how did you both feel going into a C-section, versus like an induced vaginal delivery?
It was a different experience, right? I mean, it's a surgery. Surgery is scary no matter what. There's so many things that can go wrong. Opening somebody up in many cases. It would be more stress-inducing for Ashley than for me. And the other part is I got brought in at the last second. So as soon as they're, because of COVID, as soon as they're about to come out, that's when I got invited in. So really, I wasn't there for the majority of the actual surgery.
Right.
I just got brought in moments before they're going to be delivered, right? So, but I was a little bit fearful. I mean, COVID and everything like that. Every precaution is being taken to keep everybody safe. And I had heard other C-sections had gone pretty smooth, but I've also heard the horror stories, or the ones that didn't go quite as well. But I'm pretty optimistic, so I'm like, this is going to be one of the ones that's going to work. So I just went into it looking on the bright side. That's how I live life.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. And how did it feel for you getting prepped and going into that surgery?
By the time I was on the table, it was fine. I had, again, prepped myself with a lot of the worst case scenarios. We ironically met a friend through the fertility clinic who had her first child on the same day we had our first child.
Oh, wow.
It was a crazy, wonderful story, and we still keep in touch. And she had C-sections.
Right.
So I remember talking with her. I even actually Googled a lot of videos, watched some C-sections so that I could genuinely know what it was going to look like. I practiced getting into and out of bed with taking into consideration where I will have been cut. I did a lot of prep work, I guess. So once I got on the table, it was fine. The anesthesiologist this time, though, was not that she was less confident. I was very comfortable with the anesthesiologist the first pregnancy when I got an epidural, but I guess because it was a C-section, it was more than just an epidural. I believe there was a spinal block and an epidural. So there was a lot more poking at my back to make sure they got the right spot. But unfortunately, they have to put you up so high so that the anesthesiologist is not having to bend over so that they can get the right spot. I'm not short. I'm 5'6", and they gave me a really tiny nurse to lean on. And they kept bending me over, and I'm like, she's going to fall over, and I'm going to fall off the bed.
Right.
So that was a little scary because I know when I did the epidural for Eric, I think it was you that I was leaning on. So at least he was taller.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit not nice.
Right.
The surgery itself was fine. I don't remember feeling anything. I threw up a lot. I don't know how because I hadn't eaten for like 24 hours. I wasn't even allowed to drink for 24 hours. I threw up a lot.
Yeah.
And they would give me something to try and stop, and it just didn't stop. I didn't get to hold the twins until, I don't even remember.
It was an hour or so.
But was it in the surgery room?
No.
So I didn't even get to hold them in the surgery room.
No.
So like I don't even remember. I just barfed a lot. They knew I had hemorrhaged in the first pregnancy. So I think they were prepared for something to happen in that regard. And I remember him just saying there was so much blood. Now, not having ever been in a surgery room like that before, we don't know if so much blood is normal or if it was more than normal. Like we don't have any measure, but it was fine. I mean, I felt good. They took very good care of me. They cleaned me up nicely. I tried to have apple juice or something after because I hadn't eaten or drank. Like they didn't even want me to drink for 12 or 14 hours before.
Yeah.
And I went a little too hard on the juice.
Right.
Threw all that up. Tried a cracker a few hours later. That came up too. So I didn't eat or drink for another 24 hours or so after surgery. But otherwise I felt great. They put a really great like wound bandage on that kept it dry and safe and everything, and had like a little vacuum on it, and it's fantastic. I even drove home 5 days later.
Wow.
I felt so good. Like I really did.
Good. That's
really,
great.
really did.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please share this podcast with any of your friends or family members who may benefit from it. If you feel you are experiencing any of the symptoms or issues that we discussed today, please reach out to any one of your supports or go to perinatalwellbeing.ca for more information, blog posts, podcast episodes, and ways to connect with us. Check out our new episode every other Monday.